This week on the Droids You're Looking For, a Star Wars podcast, a producer promotion with Lucasfilm, a lot of changes and new leadership within the live action area, plus some franchise films. We'll talk about that as well as a new Marvel comic book series. And, of course, our Star Wars comfort food. What film do you go to when you just need to feel good watching a Star Wars movie? We'll talk about all of that this week on the Droids You're Looking For, a Star Wars podcast. Welcome back to the Droids You're Looking For, a Star Wars podcast. Alongside Sam, I am Mike. And Sam, it's been a little while since I've been on a pod. I've missed it. But the whole group, the Outpost was fantastic. It is great to be back talking about Star Wars. Glad to be with you here, Sam. And, we're back to a Buttoned Up Boys podcast. This is the way things should go. We'll get through a lot of content, good information, no sidetracks. Everybody's in for a very standard, good podcast.
Well, I talked about it with the boys, you see, and I had to tell them, I said, Chris, Ryan, I know we're all excited to have Mike back, but he's been away for a while, and we can't just throw him to the wolves. I think we needed to gently reintroduce you to the natural habitat, and what better way to do that than your brother in buttoning up, somebody who will keep us on the straight and narrow, keep us on the rails. We're not taking that. What is it, the right path or the left path in Temple of Doom that makes you do the jump? We're not doing that. Not here. No. Not us. We're staying focused. Temple of Doom is a Lucasfilm property. Potentially some live action coming in the future.
It all circles back around. It all works. I'm straightening my
segue.
tie.
My gosh, did everybody else just get chills?
That's good. I'm straightening my tie because I wear a tie for a Buttoned Up Boys podcast. and I'm ready to get back into it. Sam, you and I did not get to express our feelings on Jedi Fallen Order. We did not say that that's going to be part of this episode. Very briefly. Yeah. Whew.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think that
off.
Ryan and Chris covered it pretty well. But you've basically set forward both of our perspectives on this new game from EA.
Yeah, but you know what? That was that was kind of a lame joke, but it's even worse than that. I think for me,
nothing can be as lame as the guy who was hosting the EA Jedi Fallen Order panel.
My
so,
God, I'd infinitely rather be accused of having too low of an energy than just being a manic psychopath that he was. It's so skewed, and Chris and I used to. I've brought it up on the pod numerous times. Chris and I used to watch E3 together. Stream it live in our apartment, and we always used to make fun of, for years they did not mic the crowd at all. So you'd have these guys, of various levels of gaming, but usually not the highest of energy, but then they'd pause for long segments, clearly for applause, and it presented as though there were none. And of course it's a sound issue. And they've corrected that. Now you get the crowd. But just the over the top insane energy. It was so off-putting. First of all, it put me in a state of anxiety and not wanting to like it. I was I don't like this person shilling so hard, working so hard to desperately get my approval and my excitement. It turned me off. But even worse than that, I think I'm in a place where it's EA has had this. It's been talked about a lot, this bad track record with Star Wars and this very low production, not well received generally, nothing innovative. And I think what's bothering me the most is that with this Fallen Order game, to me, it looks so astoundingly unremarkable and so boring and so not new. Nothing at all exciting about it. And yet, through the presentation of what I feel is somewhat the force of will of the host, but then also the fact that they're presenting it as though there is a lot of enthusiasm for it, just makes me mad at the world. I'm like, don't be duped by these clowns. EA cannot handle this license. They don't deserve it. They're not doing right by it, and it needs to go to another studio. And what worries me is, like, if there is even a modicum of success, they've trained Star Wars to be so hungry after so many years of failure that it'll be seen as, like, something more than it is. So I'm, like, angry, I guess. I'm angry.
I appreciate the anger. I think we're all there with you. And clearly, Chris and Ryan expressed that last week. There's a lot where I almost felt like this is just Battlefront and the single player story over again. It didn't seem to add anything new. It felt like the mechanics were very similar to what you've seen before, with the exception of now being able to run and climb on walls more, which is kind of Uncharted-esque, or maybe Prince of Persia. I mean, it felt
I thought
dated.
immediately of I thought immediately of Uncharted. I thought of Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
Which is kind of, Assassin's Creed definitely picked up the Prince of Persia, where it left off. And it's a bummer, man. The reason it's like I think the things that you need for a game like that to work are you need absolutely stellar and perfect mechanics, and like controls that are tighter than you've ever experienced, and you need a great story.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like this game is like, they haven't convinced me of that, because there's not a lot of story out there yet. And I'm just like, there's nothing, with all the opportunity. It's a bummer.
Well, it goes back.
The best possible case scenario would be that they surprise me, but like, I don't know, man. I'm not optimistic at this point.
The best storytelling in gaming, and granted, we probably need Ryan and Chris into this discussion to really weigh in, because I know Ryan would probably say Kingdom Hearts, even as a convoluted story, has incredible story within it. I feel like some of the best storytelling has been in games that certainly came from a lot of different publishers that were not EA. I can't remember EA even being in the conversation, because you think of Last of Us, you think of obviously the Uncharted games, you think of what we saw with the Spider-Man series, even though the Spider-Man most recent game may not be as dramatic as some of the other stories, it certainly felt like they took a property and did it justice, and that doesn't feel like it's happening here at all.
And I would say it was, frankly. I mean, I think that the first two Rocksteady Batman games, Insomniac's Spider-Man, I'm going to throw in God of War. I don't know if you've played those games, but like, storytelling in games, there are people doing it. They are doing it super, super well. And I mean, I think like one of the best is like, is her name Lindy Hemming?
Oh yeah.
And she was like the Uncharted.
Yep.
Head writer, and I believe she was on the Star Wars project that got killed.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
No, Lindy Hemming's a costume designer. Who am I thinking of? Anyway,
guys. I know who you're talking about, because I remember in those early videos they were talking about, we've got the Uncharted team, we got one of the main Uncharted, brain trust to come and work on this Star Wars game, and it felt like, wow, that is going to be something to behold, and that's not happened.
It's Amy Hennig.
There you
so
go.
I was close. I just want people to know that I'm not like crazy. And also, Lindy Hemming did like the costuming for like the Dark Knight series and a lot of Chris Nolan's movies. So it's like obvious that I would know her name. Anyway, it's a bummer. Look, I don't know. Did you have any? I also, this is like really lame, but like the guy who's like performance capturing the lead character, like I have never seen him perform in anything ever, but I've seen his face plastered everywhere from that show Gotham, which is just like absolute like tripe from what I can gather.
Did you watch any episodes of it?
I've never seen an episode.
I think I watched the first episode and then said, nope, no thank you. This is just not working.
This goes back to, and we are Star Wars fans, but this goes back to Patton Oswalt's joke of, oh, you like Batman? Well, yeah, he's in there. He's a little kid. It's like, I don't want to see it. Why would I want to see that? Why would, like, nothing about it is interesting to me. And they didn't even give Ben McKenzie a mustache as far as I could tell. So, not interested.
Well, let's get into our main topics for this edition of the pod. We are sad to not have Ryan and Chris. I would imagine that they are likely discontinued from this pod. You missed one episode. I'm surprised that I'm allowed to come back.
Well,
maybe it's just
Mike. Sorry, I do have to step in. This one's on me. I did ask them to give you some space.
You're right. You did.
Some room.
You did
to spread the. I was going to say spread your wings, but I'll say spread your lapels. Because I know you also, of course, wear a jacket, a
Sam,
sport coat.
There's a lot of joking in this pod, but I actually am sitting in my closet doing this podcast, looking at 7 different sport jackets hanging on a rack. So I'm very readily available and accessible to a lot of fine lapels.
And to all our listeners who just got the thrill of excitement, that's right. Buy yourself a microphone and you too can record from the luxury of your own closet and have your own podcast. It's a very glamorous life.
It's how we make the sausage. That's how you get things done here on a podcast. So follow us on
make
Twitter.
Make it in the closet.
Droids Pod, and follow us on Instagram, Droids Pod, Facebook, The Droids Podcast. Email us, droidspod@gmail.com. Rate and review us on iTunes. Let us know that you're enjoying the podcast. And, of course, we have a poster giveaway in progress. If you've listened to the Outpost so far, you heard what was the secret word to send us in an email to droidspod@gmail.com. We will mention that word again during this podcast, so stay tuned throughout this episode. You will hear the word that can help you win a set of Star Wars posters from Marco Menev, and you can find these online. Take a look at them. Chris has been so generous to offer these up as a giveaway. We will give them to a winner if you send in an email with the secret word that we will say later. No purchase necessary, 18 or older, U.S. only. I believe those are all the things I needed to say, right, Sam?
It sounded great to me, man.
So
yes. I don't know.
Stay tuned. Listen for that word that we will mention in the pod, unless, Sam and I get totally sidetracked and forget to mention it. And then you can go back to the Outpost and find it there. But we will give away that set of posters. So the big news that we have for this edition of the pod, there hasn't been a lot that has come out as of late in the last few weeks after Jedi Fallen Order, but we mentioned that there has been a change in the ranks at Lucasfilm and a much-deserved promotion to Michelle Rejwan, and I believe we're saying her name correctly, a little bit of a guess on the pronunciation of her last name, but she has been elevated to Senior VP of Live-Action Development and Production for Lucasfilm, which means that she will be in charge of working on the live-action series. Well, one of the many people in charge, but she will be a great force within the live-action contact for Disney+, as well as several franchise films, which would make you think that she is in the process of helping shepherd the new Benioff and Weiss films, potentially Rian Johnson, though she was a producer on The Force Awakens and a producer on The Rise of Skywalker because she came from Bad Robot with J.J. Abrams. She was not a producer on Rian Johnson's film, but I think the reason why was because Rian Johnson had Ron Bergman, and his regular producer, the regular way that he operated, wasn't a statement on her in any way. It's just that she had worked with Bad Robot for so long and so much time with J.J. Abrams that now she's been elevated to this position with Lucasfilm, and it seems like Kathleen Kennedy has recognized talent, seeing that she wants more female vision and female voices within Star Wars leading the charge, and it seems like a really good decision considering what she's done so far in her efforts into films that we've seen, and to one film that we have upcoming, but she's also worked on former J.J. Abrams projects like Super 8 and Star Trek Into Darkness. I think, Sam, that might pique your interest a little bit.
Unquestionably, to me, the most underrated Star Trek movie. That movie gets bashed constantly, and I think if people... We'll get into this more later, actually. This is a great tease. I have more to say on this topic, but I think if people could put aside the sort of... if they could put aside certain quibbles that don't actually, I think, affect the movie and the story experience, and if they rode with the characters, I think it's a great movie. I think it's exciting. I think it's emotional. I love it. It works for me. Also, just to get back to Michelle, and again, it's actually been difficult to find. We did look and try to do our due diligence. There's nowhere we could find someone saying her name. It's either Rejwan or Rejwan. And Michelle, if you're out there listening to the Droids, we're really sorry we don't know your name yet. Come on and set us straight.
Is she just the descendant of Obi-Wan, but Rejwan, right?
Rejwan.
There it
confirmed. Hashtag confirmed. Hashtag Ray B1 Kenobi confirmed. Ray B1 Kenobi. Ray B1 Kenobi? Oh my gosh. You guys. Ray BB-8 Kenobi. All right, this is turning very quickly away from a button-up
You're right.
pod.
You're right. Let's get it back on track.
We need to amend that. I will just say it's really cool. Just taking a look at Michelle, I'll use the familiar, Michelle's IMDb page. It looks like, I mean, she came up from being a casting assistant to then, a personal assistant to Jeff Garlin and then J.J. Abrams, and it seems like, her role, like she has been someone who has been reliable and put in the time, and to see her elevated to, she was an associate producer on Super 8, a co-producer on Into Darkness, and then, has moved to co-producer, executive producer, and will be producer on Rise of Skywalker. I mean, first of all, I think the track record speaks for itself, but also, I can't help but be excited when I look at, I'm myself like, evaluating. I've recently made a career change and a move into something new, and it's like, it's exciting to see when it works for people. It's exciting to see like the project she's been a part of and how it's grown, and kind of an aspirational story. I think that's great.
I like that you're going to be following in the footsteps of Michelle. You're going to be making your way up the chain, eventually getting to Lucasfilm, and then becoming the new SVP of what will be the next form of content in the next 15 years. It won't be live-action television. So whatever that is, Sam, you'll be in charge of, and I look forward to that day.
I'm sorry, I stepped away from the mic. I just had to grab Jeff a coffee real quick.
Jeff Garland is demanding any hour of the day. He would be asking for a coffee.
I'm joking, you guys. No, I'm officially based in Brooklyn full time now. It's real exciting. Obviously, been living here, and so I'm really excited about my new opportunity. But that's a personal side and excitement.
We're showing a lot of behind the scenes on this edition of the pod. Somehow, without Ryan and Chris, we just start talking about everything that makes our lives and the pod work.
Absolutely.
Other news, Sam, you brought this up before the pod.
Yeah.
There is a new set of miniseries of Marvel Comics, Star Wars Age of Resistance, which will focus in on a lot of the characters that we know, maybe learn a little bit more about Snoke, some more from Kylo Ren, Rose. It seems like another nice addition that they continue to build out the canon through the comic book series. And Marvel, for all, perspectives we've heard, they've done pretty well with what they've been doing with the comic book series over the last few years.
Yeah, and I'll say, I am woefully underread on the Star Wars corner of Marvel. I read a good amount of comic books, actually, although I do tend to focus on the superhero side of things, which I really enjoy. And my sci-fi, everything's kind of been blown out of the water lately by Saga, which is very much a Star Wars, influenced series. But I have read a couple of issues of various Star Wars comics. I read some of the Lando ones. I think I read some of the Han Solo ones, and maybe a Poe Dameron issue or something here. I've read a handful over the last few years.
The Vader series was pretty good as well. And that crossed over with the mainline Star Wars Marvel comic series, but they did a really great job with the Vader stuff.
I picked that up as not a graphic novel, a trade paperback, and so I am excited. I have not read it yet. I've heard great things, so I think it's the kind of thing that I really like. I think it's interesting to kind of evaluate. There is the one conflicting thing that I have, maybe the one conflicting feeling is that it's like, well, Marvel's a Disney company, Lucasfilm's a Disney company. all of this, part of the excitement of the old comics was that it was in this sort of expanded universe realm.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if you asked anybody who worked at Disney or Lucasfilm or Marvel, they'd say, yeah, these Age of Resistance, it's kind of playing in that world of the expanded universe, but it works, it's canon or whatever. And well, that actually makes a difference to me. Like, there was something kind of exciting and rebel and renegade about letting other people play with the toys in the sandbox.
Mm-hmm.
Having said that, though, the thing that's particularly interesting, so this actually isn't like a new, this isn't going to be like a new running series, a new line. This is part 3 in a trilogy of like mini series, like anthology stories, right? And basically, those 3 parts have dealt with the 3 trilogies of the Skywalker saga. So you've got, some set in the prequel era, some set in the classic, Han, Luke, Leia era, and this series that's coming out, which will be released, of course, in advance of Rise of Skywalker, is going to deal with the Resistance era, with the episodes 7 to 9, and the cover art looks amazing. There's these beautiful covers that have been done by Phil Noto, who has done a ton of Star Wars art. Basically, if you've seen comic book art and been like, wow, that looks awesome, is probably by Phil Noto, and he's taking over the main Star Wars series, doing like the interiors soon, which is really cool. But the like 4 titles that are coming in this Age of Resistance are going to be Rose Tico, Rey, Kylo Ren, and Snoke. And so, like, certainly people are, curious what's going to be in that Supreme Leader Snoke one. I'm super excited to see a Rose Tico comic. Just like, Rose was one of those things, polarizing or not, like, Rose was one of the characters that worked best for me. It was one of the elements that made me love that movie from Rian Johnson.
Yep.
Which we all love so much. So it's like, I hope this is not in any way, like, it seems like it seems like 2 of them are definitely major characters in Rise of Skywalker. Snoke is obviously, been sort of minimalized in this new trilogy.
What do you mean, Sam? He's coming back. It will be revealed that he's actually the Emperor and somehow Rey's father and Kylo's step-uncle. I don't know.
Just the idea that this stuff ever mattered, like that he was ever interesting. People just got mad because it was taken away from them.
I mean, the one thing I'll say is that JJ is all about the mystery box, and he tried to shroud that character in mystery to result in people theorizing. And so when you have that setup, there's going to be disappointment when there isn't a better reveal. I didn't feel that way. I didn't, but I'm just saying I can see where there are issues because of JJ pulling the usual mystery box.
I'm going to say, let's table this. I would actually love to have a full, I know we've talked a lot about Snoke. I know we've talked a lot about episode 8. I would actually like to revisit this though, because I don't actually agree with you, like, in terms of, I appreciate it, but like, I don't have that sympathetic view to like why people would react that way. It's like,
I mean, I'm not sympathetic to the crazy reaction, but
to
I can
the extent that he was set up in The Force Awakens, I think he got a far bigger payoff in Episode 8 than was ever deserved.
Yeah,
ever.
Yeah.
I just don't buy the idea that this was supposed to be a trilogy that was ultimately going to build towards Adam Driver being subservient and less interesting than the main villain, who was this scarred CGI monstrosity. Like,
oh
it's
no,
dumb.
I agree with you that that's not the direction that they were taking, but I think that JJ likes to have moments of mystery inside the larger mystery box, and so this was one of those, and he probably, didn't think that it would take such hold within the viewers' minds, and for some who did, it became a bigger deal than it should have.
Snoke's only purpose was to give you a reason to understand, like, Kylo Ren's conflict.
And to push him to the choice that he made in The Last Jedi, and to give us the throne room. I mean, to give us that throne room scene and everything that happened there.
But that came from Johnson.
No, I know. I'm saying in the end, like, what that character ended up meaning after Johnson took over.
Yeah, I guess. I think we do. I mean, I know we agree on the movie and the overall thing. I think it's just like it still burns me, that people seem, maybe not to get it, or not to appreciate it. Anyway.
Well, you talked about Rose, though, being on the one of these issues is about Rose Tico, and I'm a little disheartened that this is the most we've talked about or heard of Rose since the end of The Last Jedi, and even then the non-controversy of people being upset. The fact that she has not been more prominent in the early Rise of Skywalker content that we've seen, the first trailer, poster art, we've not seen Rose, and I'm...
Well, and that's what I was getting at. I was saying, they're doing a comic book issue about Snoke, which, there is a contingent of fandom who is really interested in that character and will probably say, like, oh, we didn't get, what we didn't get in the movies we'll finally get in the comic. And I'm hoping that the same is not true with Rose Tico here, I'm hopeful that they develop her in the comic, and that she also has quite a lot to do in episode 9. We'll see. Look, they're gonna. I do, despite all my misgivings and the conflict I have with other fan interpretations and everything, I have a lot of faith that between Disney and J.J. Abrams and the sort of overall story skeleton that they were supposedly given, I have a lot of faith that this movie's going to work. It's going to work on an emotional level, which is what I'm looking for.
Sam, do we ever see Rose and Snoke in a scene together?
No.
Well, think about that for a moment. Maybe Rose is Snoke. Let's just put it out there. Hashtag Rose is Snoke.
You heard it here first. Hashtag Rose is Snoke.
Sam, one of the things that any Star Wars fan has when they are thinking about all of the films is you have at least one, if not all of them, where you're like, I need to go back and I just need to forget about this day that I had. Whatever happened, work, family, anything in your life, you just need to escape, and there's a Star Wars film you go to for that. What is your Star Wars comfort food film? Because I feel like everybody has one, and it to me, it'd be easy to go with the original trilogy, but I'm curious what you would say is your main, and I'm not discounting the original trilogy. The original trilogy was probably my comfort food for the majority of my life, but I'm wondering what you feel like is the movie that you go back to and just, like, put it on, and it makes you feel better right away.
Mike, answer a question real quick first. Are you sitting down?
I am in this closet.
Are you in a closet? Oh, that was where I was going. Are you in a closet?
Yes.
Attack of the Clones.
No. I'm glad
Absolutely.
You told me to sit down, because if I wasn't sitting down... Ooh. Oh, wait, didn't we used to have a chair fall over pratfall on this podcast? It was one of the great moments that Chris had, because that when a chair falls over on a podcast, it always works, because people really get that joke.
I tried to do it just there. I don't think it worked. Yeah, man.
Wow.
And I fully acknowledge how crazy that is, because, as I've said numerous times on the podcast, it is not only my least favorite and least enjoyable to watch saga film, it is also my least favorite and least enjoyable to watch of any Star Wars film.
Wow. And yet,
but I can get into why. Yeah.
Huh. I'm curious.
I think I think there's a couple things, as I know I've said on the pod, and I think we all have shared on the pod. The worst Star Wars film ever made is still, like, better than 85 or 90% of films that are out there in terms of, like, what we get out of them, and just also like genuinely in terms of quality.
I mean, maybe not dialogue-wise, but for everything else. Yeah.
Well, and I think that is a big part of why this works for me, because I'm torn. I was torn between this, or I also will throw on Phantom Menace a lot as a comfort food, and it's like, whoa, those are two prequels. Those are two frequently, prequels that are listed in the bottom of people's list, and then the other one is Star Wars, the original. And I say Star Wars, I don't say A New Hope, as has been established on this podcast. That's not the title.
A&H. That's what I go with.
It's Star Wars, and we're going to get it right, because the best Star Wars movie is Star Wars. I think what it is I think it does have to do with the so there's a couple elements. There's a campy quality to it. It's definitely a film that revels in its own silliness, and it goes for sort of operatic levels of drama and comedy and action and stuff. It's very big. It's very broad. The performances are, not straight drama performances. You've got Ewan McGregor, who's killing it. Obviously, always is. And I think it's one that is, because it's not a favorite, because it's not a movie that super engages me, that I love a lot, it is one of the most relaxing things for my brain. I truly do. I kind of zone out.
Wow.
And I don't actually pay attention even to the plot of the movie. I just pay attention to the music and the visuals and the sound effects and the special effects, and I'm kind of this is I don't mean this as an insult. It's kind of an opiate of a movie. And in that regard, it's one that I have numerous times thrown on nights when I can't sleep, and not to put me to sleep. I throw it on to relax me and to entertain me while I'm restless. I've thrown it on when I'm super stressed about work and I can't clear my head, but I know something Star Wars related might help. I throw it on. I use it in the same way that just to put it, and I'm super curious to hear your answer, so this will be the last I say for now, but I use it in the same way that I use some of the late period Roger Moore films or the Batman 66 show, which is that, and I don't think those are inherently bad movies, but I also think that there's the same sort of attention drift that happens for me that is something for me is very much a comfort food, is very satisfying, is very much a safe sort of cocoon to relax when whatever is on my mind. So tell me, now that I've shared my deep dark secret, not only have I read Game of Thrones, but I also watch Attack of the Clones ad nauseum. What's yours, Mike?
I mean, first of all, this is again jaw on the floor style that we had after reacting to you finding out you had read most of Game of Thrones. I'm in Ryan's camp right now. Truly shocked. I mean,
I've read all of it that's out there.
I can't believe that Attack of the Clones is that for you, but I get what you're saying, because the majority of the things that you said about Attack of the Clones would be what I would say about my answer, and it's The Force Awakens. And I don't mean it in terms of I think Force Awakens is a better film.
Yep.
But to me, it is that opiate. It is a shot of pure energy and Star Wars high that just makes me happy throughout. It's all about the pacing. It's essentially all dessert. It's funny at not every turn, but for the majority of the movie. There's great jokes within it. Visually, it feels Star Wars. It gets me at every moment that they hit the beats that I want from a Star Wars movie. And the reason why it is my comfort food more than the original trilogy is I hold the original trilogy in a higher regard, and I have too much esteem for those films that when I sit down to watch them, I don't want to have my focus be split. I don't want to have something else going on. I don't want to feel like I'm zoning out while watching it, and I don't really like to feel like I'm zoning out while I'm watching any film. But The Force Awakens to me is that movie that I know it well enough by now because I've watched it so many times that I know all the beats that if I'm not paying attention fully, I still get a lot out of it, and I still get that emotional rush and high throughout so many memorable moments, which when you really think about it, it's incredible that they've now created these indelible moments within Star Wars and I think pop culture that came from The Force Awakens, that when that movie came out, it had so many boxes to check. They did that and beyond, because I can think of so many things that stand out to me right now that just make me happy when I watch them. It's the moment when Finn yells after shooting down the turret of the Star Destroyer with Poe, when Poe says who talks first, with BB-8 just making his first entry into frame, Chewie and Han coming back on the Falcon, Kanja Club. I mean, there's Kylo Ren and the moment with the helmet. There's just so many things that I love in that movie that just make me feel good. And if I've had a bad day, I come back and I put it on and I feel better, and it is my opiate, and it's what I want when I feel like I need to escape again. I'll put on The Force Awakens. Star Wars, the original, can be that for me as well. And I think it's part of just getting used to the new pace of filmmaking, that there are times where I'll watch it and I'm like, oh, I can't wait till we get to the trench run. Oh, I can't wait until we get to this next thing, because I want it to move a little bit. And there's never that in The Force Awakens, because it just is constantly moving. And that's J.J. Abrams for you. But that's pretty much why I see it that way. And I've told this story on the pod before. I had a particular long work day on a road trip that I had to do for work in Omaha, Nebraska, where I don't spend a lot of time, not typically in Omaha, Nebraska, but there was an Alamo Draft House there. They had the lobby was decorated like the Death Star. They had the Emperor's Throne. It was January following the release of The Force Awakens, so January of 2016. Got there at maybe 9 o'clock, had a burger and a beer, and watched The Force Awakens for maybe the fourth or fifth time in the theater. And it was one of my favorite movie-going experiences of the last 10 years. And that's what that movie does for me every time. It always brings me back to that point, not only of seeing it there, but seeing it for the first time, and just pure joy in feeling like I'm immersing myself in Star Wars again. And that's why The Force Awakens is my comfort food.
I mean, I think anybody listening is going to hear that story. I mean, that is pretty much the perfect movie-going experience. And for those of you who, I know that Alamo is still, they're national now, and they have a lot of locations. I know they're not near everybody. So if you're someone who doesn't have one near you, petition, you can start one. They're expensive to franchise, but you can get one going. But if you live even within an hour or two of one, it's worth it, like, for a big movie to, like, go for that experience. They're fun experiences. Or I'm saying, Alamo is obviously kind of the front runner of this brand, but it's kind of the new cinema experience of, full dinner service, table service in a theatrical setting with very comfortable seats. It's a little bit of a premium experience in terms of, like, ticket price. And, of course, you're adding food and drinks and stuff. But it's amazing. And the idea of, like, that's also the perfect time, because it's not going to be super packed and crowded. You can really just enjoy it on your own time. You've already seen it, so there's none of the anxiety or pressure or nerves. I will say, look, the Force Awakens is up there with me. The reason I didn't name it, look, comfort food means to every individual what it means, and there's no wrong answer here, right? I would actually love to hear what listeners, who are out there, like, what's your favorite Star Wars comfort food? What's the movie you throw on?
Please send us droidspod@gmail.com, Twitter, droidspod. Let us know. We would love to hear what your comfort food is.
There is, some of you are going to go with, the favorite. Some of you are going to go with the best. And for me, the thing that I find, and I do this with James Bond, I do this with a lot of things. It's that idea of, like, too many of them, and the best ones are on too high of a pedestal to, like, watch casually at this point.
It goes back to our full meal conversation. Always.
The full meal, but with The Force Awakens, the thing that happens is maybe it's because I've seen it fewer times than you. I get super drawn in, and suddenly when I get drawn in, it's very enjoyable to watch. But it's not like what I go for in a comfort food is, like, I want to put on a movie that I can either look at with no sound or listen to without looking at and like have a good experience, if that makes sense. And it's that's when I pulled out that I don't want to we are not supporting the use of opiates, but like just that idea of like it kind of dumbs me down. It kind of lets me just zone out and veg and kind of just go blank. And that's what that's what sometimes it's Phantom Menace, but a lot of the time it is clones. And I think there's also something in like there's a freshness to clones, because I think for years I'd only seen it in theaters. Like it's only been recently that I revisited it. So there's this like freshness aspect that it's like it's like bad and like kind of boring enough that I can zone out, but then also new enough that I'm like not looking at a thing I've seen 60 times. It hits a real sweet spot. Well, it's not fair. When we're having this conversation, I think it's a really potentially robust conversation. So we'll definitely revisit this to get Chris and Ryan's answers, because I'm curious.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear what they have for it.
I do want to... It ties into one other thing, right? And this is this idea of like turning off your brain when you're watching something like Star Wars and the appeal of that. And it's something that Rachel, my wife, who's appeared on the pod... you guys can go back and listen to, it was the Last Jedi episode. It was one of the episodes, I guess, after. It was far after the Last Jedi.
Yeah, it was a couple episodes after the Last Jedi review, yeah.
We'll try and dig through it and find it and put it in the show notes. Now I've promised something. Chris
and
will
we'll
never
also
do that
bring
work.
Rachel back on the pod, right?
Rachel will be back on soon. But if we can, I'll put the episode number in the show notes. But she shared with me there is a... I guess it's a like YA author who's also like pretty active online. Charlie Jane Anders. And
former IO9 editor.
As that where okay. Yeah. So Rachel stumbled upon like a week or two earlier this week. Rachel sent me something about like she had tweeted something about Batman that was funny, but then this other conversation came up. And I think it kind of speaks to a little bit of why I, enjoy Attack of the Clones, and a little bit of like something else that's come up in terms of like, of sort of relaxed enjoyment and my view on like how best to enjoy escapist fantasy, sci-fi, cinema, books, whatever. So Charlie Jane said, I've been on 100 panels at different conventions where people have insisted that magic needs limits and everything needs to make perfect sense and the worlds need to be totally consistent. But escapist storytelling is often more fun if you just skate right over the huge plot holes. I'd argue this is why Star Wars is so much more popular than Star Trek. For example, they're both escapist fun. Star Trek really enforces the Federation feel, and it's like a serious organization, while the Rebels and Imperials are flimsy and unreal AF. I think this next point is particularly funny. Like, how does Han Solo become a general? I know, it's a battlefield commission or whatever, but seriously, who looked at that guy and said, let's make him a general right off the bat? I picture a bunch of rebel majors and captains and actual generals getting super drunk and bitching about it. A side note, I wonder if general in the Star Wars universe just doesn't mean the same thing as general in Earth militaries. Like maybe they use general as the opposite of specific. Like this guy has no particular focus or leadership qualities, so he's just
a general officer.
He's just a general officer. But the final thought, and here's what the main point is. Final thought. The same people who insist that rules and internal consistency at all costs are often, most likely, the same people who love the original Ghostbusters, where we're told over and over, never ever cross the streams. Right, which is just this idea that it's like, first of all, there is a fun in establishing rules of a world to intentionally break those rules,
exactly,
and encourage that rebellious spirit. But then the other thing, and I think her stronger point throughout, is just this idea of like, and I think it applies beyond the sci-fi fantasy escapist genre. I think it applies to mysteries and spy thrillers and anything, is the idea of like, if the story is strong enough and if the characters are strong enough, I am someone who is so happy to not have ever noticed or think about supposed plot holes or logical fallacies within a fictionalized tale. And I don't know where you come down on it. It's definitely easy to get caught up in these arguments, but I just thought this was like a great series. And I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I love that you brought it up because, I don't want to default to it too quickly, but it's the way that you receive the ending of Lost if you were a Lost fan to me. Because if you are stuck in the minutia, if you're stuck in the rules, if you're stuck in every hanging loose end of story, rather than being invested in what is the great character arcs that they've given you in that show, and I'm not saying anybody's wrong to not like the way it ended. That's fine. But if your investment was more about, like, please tell me this mystery versus I want to find out what happens to these characters that I love, it's harder to find a satisfying ending to a story like that. And what she's talking about, to me, resonates in that area, that when I go in, I am always much more invested in what story you're telling me rather than the mechanics of the story. That's what works for me in fantasy storytelling and any storytelling. You know, we're probably talking more about fantasy, but as you said, it can work in a lot of different areas. One thing that's more recent that comes to mind, and I know Ryan has seen this. I don't know if you've seen it yet, Sam. The Society is a show on Netflix. It's kind of a teen show, but really touches on a lot of different things that are a little bit deeper than what you would expect from something from, say, the CW. But within it, there are questions of just like the basics of like, oh, how do the cell phones still work when everyone has disappeared from regular Earth? And you know what? Trying to answer that question isn't going to be enjoyable. Enjoy the story that they're trying to tell. Don't worry about that kind of mechanic.
Well, and I think there's sort of like one other interesting thing. I had another thought and it actually left me, but one of the interesting things that when you were talking about Lost and the ending, which I haven't seen, I haven't watched Lost, but like the idea of, I think what happens is when someone receives something and they don't like it, there is an instinctive reaction to look for a reason why, and logical fallacies are really easy reasons to point to why and say, yeah, that bugged me. They never resolved this mystery. I would submit that had they resolved it and everything else was the same, you probably still wouldn't have liked the story. Because I think there's like, it just didn't work for you.
Yeah.
And you don't need to find a reason why. It's okay to not like something. It's okay for not everything to work for you. Is one thing. The other thing that I found really interesting is, so Mike, I'm on the same page as you. I think that mechanics and plot are just vehicles for story and character growth, right? Yeah. But I will say something interesting. Rachel, when she shared this with me, brought up she and I had a like robust conversation about the mechanics of Captain America's sort of final act journey in Avengers Endgame, which I won't spoil here, but I
was about to just give a spoiler warning if you wanted to.
Well, no, I think I can do this without.
And in this spoiler warning, the secret word for the poster giveaway is cloud. Anyway, go ahead, Sam.
Spoiler warning, cloud. Now nobody listened and heard it. No, so but without going into it, there are definitely some plot and mechanical and like rule elements that Steve Rogers potentially violates. In his final acts, in the film Endgame. And Rachel and I had like really long conversations about it, and I think it would be great to have her on and talk about this, but I think I can say, like, she was really interested in, how did this work? Why did this work? Well, how would this happen? Which, in talking to her in the context of this conversation, she said, that for her is purely fun. It's an intellectual, fun engagement. It's really stimulating, and it's a way for her to dive deeper into something we both really love. And she's like, I love thinking about it. It doesn't detract or add. It doesn't. Excuse me. I guess what I should say is it doesn't detract, but it adds. Whether or not the mechanics work or don't, it just all adds for her to dive in. And that was fascinating to me because I see that in her, and that's why I really enjoyed those conversations. But where it's like I'm a person who I'm like, I don't want to think about that stuff. I just want to have the emotional reaction to the what is in Endgame, the conclusion of his story for that movie, and I found it extremely emotionally satisfying, regardless of what rules it adhered to or broke.
I find that really interesting because I feel like I'm in both camps, which is not the same for something like Endgame, but when you are theorizing about a TV series and you have week to week, and obviously week to week is going away with the way Netflix and binging and everything works, but I felt like theorizing about those things is so much fun. Talking about all the minutia of how it could all work is a ton of fun, and for a lot of people, that means they need then the answer. But to me, it was like, I like to talk about all of that and, potentially see how it's all going to go. But if I don't get the answer I want, or that answer isn't necessarily fully realized, it doesn't ruin it for me because the bigger investment for me is in those character arcs. And so I hear that conversation that you had with Rachel, and I'm like, oh, I'd love to dive deep into everything that Captain America did. I want the Disney Plus series with Chris Evans reprising the role to find out everything he did going back in time because I want to see all of that. And yet I also am okay not knowing because I also love the emotional payoff that happened. So there's ways to look at all of that I think can be satisfying for everybody, but it's when you build up your expectations that it has to be this, or you better give me an answer that at least makes this kind of sense, otherwise I won't be happy. That's when you run into some problems.
Well, and I think I think it may not even be an expectations thing, right? I think it may be people's need, and I don't know where this comes from. I think, we're all, literally every person who's in this sphere talking about movies, talking about culture, talking about this stuff, we're probably all in some way responsible, but there is somehow a need to analyze and explain and provide proof of and justification for your feelings. Yeah. And I think it's maybe in some cases that is true and a valuable pursuit. There are certain things where it's a blanket snap judgment should be questioned and should be challenged and should require further explanation, But I think when we're talking about pop culture and movies and stuff, and I think it's okay. And I wish more people felt it was okay to just, for instance, say, I didn't like The Last Jedi. I didn't like it because watching it didn't entirely make sense, and it didn't feel good. I didn't have fun watching it, and I just didn't dig it. It felt weird to me. And I wish that was okay, rather than needing to go the extra mile and say, well, the internal logic, it doesn't make sense because it flies in the face of what they were setting up with Snoke in The Force Awakens. Or, you know what? It doesn't actually hold true to Luke's character if you analyze it in this, and that way. It's why? How did the X-Wing get underwater? It's just who cares? Why couldn't he levitate it? And who cares?
Sam, you got a big uphill battle going against the internet on this one.
Just me, I guess it's, but for me, it's I'm okay with somebody telling me I watched The Last Jedi and I didn't like it.
I'm okay with that as well.
I like to have that more than somebody, trying to say how it broke these rules of Star Wars or something.
But I like to have the conversation, and then when we reach that point where it's okay, clearly there are things set in their mind that I'm never going to convince anybody of differently, and not that you have to go into that conversation saying, oh, I'm going to convince them that it's great. I just like to know where everyone's coming from, because I feel like it's informative to me to see how they experience the film.
Here's an interesting thought I'm just having now, and I know we're running along on this. But this is actually
Buttoned Up Boys
to
Pod.
me.
It always goes long.
This is actually interesting to me. I am, by my nature, I'm an optimist. I've always been a glass half full person. I tend to be pretty happy. I tend to be really open. I tend to receive things well. In general, big picture life stuff, I'm an optimist. I think given that, I'm happy to debate things with anybody, but if someone presents me with a case of like maybe why I shouldn't like something or why it's not good or something like that, where it fails, my response is most likely going to be like, huh, interesting point. Well, what am I going to say? What can I say? I just like it. Whereas I am conversely with things I don't like, I am always going to the table and willing to be like, really? You loved that. Maybe I'll watch it again. Maybe I'll give it another shot. And so it's like, for me, the default is like, I'm willing to be argued, that I'm wrong about something that I think is bad, but not as willing, like, if I like something, I like it. And I think a lot of people try and persuade you that something you like is bad.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Sam, I don't know if you were
thing.
made for the internet age. I'm not saying you're just like the way that you're talking about it. The internet just doesn't see things that way. and your perspective, but like that's the way that everyone should be. And I like to think I'm of the same way. Of initially, and in like a younger phase of my life, I would have just taken more offense and been like, "No, you're never going to convince me." But now at this point, I feel the same way. I'm like, I haven't watched that movie in a long time, and I didn't think it was great, but maybe I'll go back and watch it again and see what I feel about it now, knowing that there are maybe things I missed.
I will tell you, I think maybe I don't like the internet. I'm very grateful for the pod, and we need the internet to make the pod.
But otherwise.
But honestly, I think I don't like the internet. I think maybe you're right, man.
Speaking of the internet, follow us on Twitter, DroidsPod, Instagram, DroidsPod, Facebook, The Droids Podcast. Get all that internet in you, Just spend a lot of time on the internet where, things don't really align with the way we see the world.
Also, that's not how I'd phrase it, but yeah, cool.
Sam, we are close to the end. We gave away the secret word. It is Cloud. If you want to enter for those Marco Manev set of trilogy Star Wars posters, email us at droidspod@gmail.com, 18 or older, U.S. only. No purchase necessary. Let us know what you think. Send us an email, droidspod. Let us know your comfort food, Star Wars, film. We're going to hear more from Chris and Ryan on that next week. Last thing before we wrap up the pod, Sam, we've talked about how Galaxy's Edge has a $25,000 R2-D2 that you can purchase. This is anyone, if you have the means, can walk into Galaxy's Edge and buy a custom R2-D2. You can get it any color you want. You can have it in pristine condition. You can get it in battle damage condition. You will get it for $25,000 plus shipping and handling. So there's a whole other fee that will come in with that. 3 people have already purchased said $25,000 R2-D2 in 3 weeks since the park opened?
Isn't the wealth gap in this nation just infuriating? It's so insane to me that anyone could even conceivably do that, and the fact that you know what, I'm going to say
really embarrassing when I see you this weekend, Sam, and I show off my 3 R2-D2s.
You did it 3 times under an assumed name. The idea that I'm betting 2 of the people who did it can afford it, and 1 of the people who did it is
outside their
putting themselves in tragic debt that they'll never crawl out of to own a piece of potentially what they thought was going to be I'm the only one history. And it's just yeah, man. I mean, look, guys, I love Star Wars. I think unless you're obscenely wealthy, don't do it. Don't buy that.
Well, you can buy. I mean, you can buy a $6,000 one that isn't remote controlled. I'm not saying that that's cheap either, but if you need to have a 1-to-1 scale R2-D2, You don't need to spend $25,000.
Mike, the thing is, you just tried to make a case
for spending
for a $6,000 droid, which is also like, I'm still in my boat of like, this is not right. This is not okay.
Well, hold on to your socks. Galaxy's Edge is also selling a $7,000 full Stormtrooper costume.
I'll take one. I'll take one. I assume it comes with a jacket.
It does. It does. I have always dreamed of having a 1-to-1 R2, not for $25,000. Not for $25,000. Even if I had the means, I don't think so.
I mean, look, the truth is, like, it's probably in our lifetime we will see something like real droids. I mean, it won't be an R2 unit, and I know that's a very different thing, but it's like, man, if you're gonna spend $25,000, like, get you a robot that can cook you dinner,
On that note, that is going to do it for the Droids You're Looking For, a Star Wars podcast. We will be back with Chris and Ryan. For Sam, I am Mike. What a pleasure, Sam. Always great to have a buttoned-up boys pod.
And for Mike, I am Sam. Mike, loving those buttons. Looking so sharp. Come out of the closet once in a while, man. Show it off to the world. I love it.
That's it for the Droids You're Looking For, a Star Wars podcast.
What they throw.
You boys want to go to Galaxy's Edge?